All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 102 of the In a Nutshell podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me. And tonight, we're going to be going over week 2 in the Big Ten. We had a couple of big games, a couple of not so big games. And Joe, let's get right into it. We'll get to some of the bigger games later. Friday night, 2 victories for the Big Ten teams. Both of which are expected to finish near the bottom of the league. So you got to celebrate every win if you're Northwestern or Maryland.
Yeah, that Maryland game was looking a bit shaky. Really was a one-score game most of the way through. Luckily, they Malik Washington, kind of sealed the deal with that TD pass late, and Maryland's 2-0. There's 14 undefeated teams in the Big Ten, and Maryland is one of them. I don't know if everyone would have had that on their bingo card. Not that they weren't favored to win their first 2 games, but for a team that is still probably consensus picked at the bottom of the league, I think the whole conference should be celebrating that. That way, the cumulative playoff record slash bowl selection is probably more lucrative for everyone. But other than that, Sean, I look at Northwestern beating Western Illinois, like you said at the end of the cast last week. If that was a story, that's a big time problem. So luckily, it's not a story, and I didn't even have to pay attention. I just saw Preston Stone had a pretty good stat line, and frankly, I would have expected that against that inferior of an opponent.
All right. Well, let's go to 2 teams who we did expect to be 2-0 after 2 weeks, or maybe not one of them because they played a huge game in week 1. But Ohio State and Penn State both pick up shutouts, 70-0 for OSU over Grambling, 34-0 for Penn State over Florida International. Joe, not much to talk about here other than seems like all of the important players got through without any injuries, and on to the next.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say, Drew Aller, 19 to 33, probably not his best game, but I probably chalk that up to not comparing him to JJ McCarthy, but JJ McCarthy had his worst game against Bowling Green in 2023, and he threw 3 picks. So if this is Aller's worst game, this is not the I don't think it's any reason for panic, nor is it any indicator that it's going to continue.
And I think this is sort of a little bit of a theme around the country is when these big time programs have these games that they know that they're going to win by a bunch and they're early in the day. Like, some teams start slow. I mean, they're college kids. It's probably not who you'll be at the end of the day if you only manage 1 touchdown in the first half or anything like that, but they end up winning by quite a bit. They'll be ready to play their big games, and luckily for them, 2 big victories. All right, we're going to go to the team that was ranked 3rd highest in the Big Ten, Joe, and they had a power conference opponent this week. Dan Lanning and Oregon hosted Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State, and while this spread was in the 30s before, Oregon wins 69-3. It seems like Oregon's offense might be a little bit more explosive than we gave them credit for, and Oklahoma State, not a Big 12 pod, but it seems like the Mike Gundy era is going to be coming to an end soon. But we thought Oregon would win this big, but not this big.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the rushing stats, it's absurd. Noah Whittington, 4 carries, 91 yards. Jordan Lemar, 6 for 87. I mean, it seems like even on the non-long runs, you take out the 59 and the 53-yard runs for both those guys, and they're still averaging about 7 to 10 a carry. So completely overpowering. I think that speaks to Oregon's offensive line superiority in this matchup. Dante Moore, 266, 3 TDs. I think he's kind of getting in a groove now, and I think that's probably by design by Oregon. They go to Northwestern this Saturday. Can't imagine that's going to be much of a challenge. Similar spread, 27.5, 4 TDs. Got the Civil War, and then got that monster matchup at Penn State week 5. So I think they want to continue to build up his confidence because the last time we did see Dante Moore in 2023, I think confidence and experience were 2 things he was severely lacking in. And hopefully for Oregon's sake and for his sake, these kind of blowout matchups, even against some of these weaker Power 4, even higher Group of 5 like Oregon State, is going to pay off in the end.
Yeah, it looks like a different player, and probably one of the benefits of the transfer portal, like going back to why the first people transferred. It's a incredibly high recruit, didn't really work at his first school. he transfers, and it's just 2 games, Joe. But I think expectations might be a little bit higher than they were at the beginning of the year for Oregon. But all right, up next we've got Illinois going on the road to Duke. What an interesting game this was. Illinois is winning by 1 point at the half. It felt like they should have been losing by a lot. Duke certainly didn't take advantage there, and then they end up pulling away, and the scoreline looks ugly. It's 45-19 Fighting Illini. Duke ends up with 5 turnovers. Duke was a very popular upset pick by some people in the media. Not us. We didn't think it would be this much, but Illinois, Joe, takes care of a Duke team that will not be near the top of a pretty solid ACC this year, but Illinois takes care of business and they make it look pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic Brett Bielema, don't make mistakes, kind of let the dummy hang himself, or for a more general PC term, kind of just don't make mistakes, let the other teams make the mistakes. And boy, did that second half indicate that. I think this game probably could have ended a lot closer than a 26-point deficit. The first half, I thought Duke did outplay Illinois, like you said, though. Like you said, Sean, I think ultimately what it comes down to, though, is Luke Altmaier's poised enough. He's been in college football long enough to understand turnovers, and turnovers are the real detriment to your team, and kind of just getting his playmakers the ball. I think Hank Beaty's kind of an interesting target for him. I think overall we didn't give his supporting cast enough credit, because Aiden Lardy, who a lot of the people thought would explode, didn't even have that great a game. It's his receivers by committee, it looks like, are kind of just getting it done for now. So Illinois, you look at the schedule, they play Western Michigan, and then they have probably that pretty big game at Indiana. Hoping that's probably going to be a big noon kickoff, considering
7:30.
Michigan.
They're going
Oh,
to
7:30. That's right.
They're going to Lubbock in week 4. And you would assume that they will be going to Happy Valley for week 5. I think they're in an alternate every other week with the Big 12. I was a little bit surprised not to see it at Big Noon, but that'll be the NBC game at 7:30 in Bloomington, and you'd have to assume that that plays into the hands of Indiana a little bit, but not the week 4 preview.
Yeah, no, so not sorry, Sean, not to get into that, but for Illinois, you're looking really good. I think if you take away from that second half, it's probably the word I just said, takeaways. Don't give Illinois extra possessions, and don't play right into Brett Bielema's hands. And I think Manny Diaz's squad, unfortunately for them, did exactly that. And that's why Brett Bielema, Sean, like I said, I told people in that video, do not undersell this guy. He's been in this league. He's had success in this league now for 3 different decades: the 2000s, 2010s, and now the 2020s. I think the only other guy you could say that about in this, and for sure say this about, is Kirk Ferentz. And there's arguments out there he wasn't even that successful in the 2020s. So going forward for Illinois, really good on them. And like we both said, Sean, we predicted them to win. I didn't think this deficit would be as wide.
Yeah, Mensa for Duke, a big quarterback in the transfer portal. NIL deal rumored pretty high, but still it was his second game there, and I just think Bielema, saw blood in the water there with a new quarterback and a new system. They're already the better team, and then they look pretty good. So good victory there for Illinois as they get the job done. All right, Joe. Unfortunately, we need to go down to Norman, Oklahoma. Up next, Michigan 13, Oklahoma 24. It was a game that, Michigan's defense wasn't elite, but they were good enough to hold them in the game. They gave the offense chance after chance to get something going, but at the end of the day, Michigan's offense was really one play: a 75-yard rush from Justice Haynes outside, or just after the first half, and Oklahoma, John Mateer, played a little bit of Superman, but Oklahoma deserving winners on the day. Joe, disappointing trip for your Wolverines down to Norman.
Yeah, I think the consensus take was a lot of outrage and complaints for the Michigan fan base. And I'm not saying those aren't validated. I'm not completely shocked Michigan's offense looked as inept as it did. I was more appalled at the play calling and the offensive line execution, which was really poor. At the end of the day, Sean, John Mateer, I know he made the mistake on the interception, but other than that and a few missed throws, he played a really solid game, rushed for a lot of first downs. The third down conversion percentage is the story of the game to me. 56.5% for the Sooners. And I know there was a decent amount of third and shorts in there, but they were converting their fair share of third and five pluses. Michigan, less than 25%. And that's the story of the game, I think. Michigan's a +2 in the turnovers. You'd think that would probably get them the victory or at least keep them within a score. But just special teams miscues, not a great punting day for Michigan. You even had Zavada, their super kicker, miss a chip shot 34-yarder. Outside of that, the offense just had too many three and outs, could barely get on Oklahoma's side of the field. And to be honest with you, Sean, besides that one chunk play and long run by Justice Haynes, the other field goal came via Oklahoma's mishap on a punt. And that 3rd and 2, that it's very clear Bryce Underwood's a freshman quarterback, and that's not a criticism of him. I think people overreacted. I'm not going to include myself in that for him having a very good game against New Mexico. I'll put it to you this way, Sean. We're on to week 4 preview, but week 4 is going to be a big week for a lot of teams in this conference, and Michigan's next midterm is at Nebraska. I think that game could be like the USC game. I'm not going to get into it now, but overall theme for Michigan, it's clearly you have a young team. Maybe your defense isn't as good as you thought. The pass rush wasn't as effective as I wanted it to be. And boy, does that offensive line need work. Everything else isn't way too shocking.
I think the rushing was really ineffective for Michigan, and now the numbers look all right because of that 75-yard run, but they were like under 3 yards per carry if you take that one out. So they weren't able to get anything going on the run. They clearly tried to establish it. I think coaching was a big problem in this one. I don't think with the game plan Michigan went in, I don't know if they could have won. They didn't play aggressive. Like, if you're going on the road, it's not just going to be handed to you. You've got to go and take it. And I think that this, like, the game script or the game path or whatever, I think it actually, like, could have been worse. You won the turnover battle. John Mateer did play some hero ball, but, like, this isn't a team that's going to compete for the national title. Like, Michigan could have gone and won this game. Oklahoma was more desperate. They needed this one more. They're playing in a really tough league. I don't think that they're going to get higher than, like, 15th in the country. I don't know if they could beat any of the elite teams in the
Maybe
SEC.
They'll give Texas a game. I bet that game's always a game, but you never know.
And then maybe they can beat a team like around them in the teens if it's at home. But like, just Mateer is really good. He's played a ton of college football. He sat and watched a ton of college football at Washington State. That to me was the difference. A team that in Oklahoma, Brent Venables said, "All right, if we're gonna win, it's gonna be because of our quarterback." And Sharon Moore basically didn't even allow his quarterback to play. And Underwood still could have hit some more throws and all that, but I don't know if Michigan could have won with that game plan.
Yeah, one last thing, Sean, before I hold my peace on this is Sherrod Moore played right to Brent Venables' hands, and I'll probably blame Chip Lindsey as well. Wick Martindale, I don't know what else he could have done. I know he was a little aggressive at times, over blitzing, but I don't think he really had a choice because the pass rush wasn't getting home. And Mateer, to his credit, at the end of the day, there were 6 critical plays in that game. Oklahoma made 5 of them, and that's why they won by 11 points. And it probably could have been a lot more, let's be frank.
Yeah, Wick Martindale's, this wasn't all too different from the Giants game this weekend. Nope. He has to keep his defense in it. They can't take any unnecessary shots. They have to pick their spots where to be aggressive. And the offense just doesn't really show up. That's something to watch out for as we get into the Big Ten. Because I don't know if Oklahoma's defense is amazing. I think they're pretty solid and they're good. But they're not elite. I think Michigan will see some better defenses in the Big Ten. So we thought Oklahoma was a little further ahead. They needed the win more. But I think Michigan is leaving with a few more questions than we maybe expected them to from this one.
Yep.
All right, down we go to Big Noon. Up in Ames, Iowa, Kurt Ferentz and the Hawkeyes roll into the Cy-Hawk game against Rocco Becht and Iowa State, and it's the Cyclones and Kyle Conradi who hits a game-winning field goal. 16-13. Joe, Iowa State ends up getting the victory. The game goes, the game goes Iowa's way. Like, this was the type of game that they had to play to win. They don't. Iowa State a threat in the Big 12 for sure. Iowa, really, the history in this one, really, this rivalry really favors them, especially recently, but it's the Cyclones who get the job done here. Unfortunately, it's more of the same for Iowa.
Yeah, I think the only coach that probably had a worse week than Sharon Moore is Kirk Ferentz. He is getting absolutely flamed by the fan base. And, I know a lot of the fan base talk is really reactive at times. And, perhaps a podcast like ours should try to tune it out. But at the end of the day, we're both fans. We're going to hear it and we're going to see it. It's because it's more of the same for Iowa, right? This is a game they normally win. Mark Gronowski, I'm not going to blame him, but 13 to 24, 83 yards, one interception, less than a 30 QBR. It seems like it's the same old Iowa. And I think last year Tim Lester did a pretty decent job, but it's just more of the same on the points per game. You take out against the inferior opponents or when they ran up the score, and it's probably not as different as Brian Ferentz, to be completely honest with you, Sean. And I think Iowa fans have had enough. I don't think they're going to say Kirk's a failure. I think everyone across the conference, including at Iowa City, are going to say he's been objectively a great coach. But, it's kind of looking like the end of the Fran McCaffrey era in a way. It parallels it. You're kind of losing to the teams you normally beat. You're losing the same way, except now it's lack of offense versus lack of defense for McCaffrey. You look at the schedule, nothing too daunting, but let's be honest, Sean, there's not going to be a game on that schedule that we're going to expect them to win that'll be an upset in any fashion. I think the Iowa at night upsets is kind of over. I think the last real one they had was 2021 against Penn State. So, we're 4 years removed from that. I know they were the Big Ten title game 2 years ago, but that was a Big Ten West versus top two in the Big Ten. I think I'm not going to call it end to the Ferris era, but those noises keep getting louder and louder. And, I think Kirk, not that he has to silence the fans, but in a way, he might have to silence the fans.
Yeah, it's my takeaway from this one, and I know it was a non-conference game, but you're not in the Big Ten West anymore. Like, you can lose these games to anyone. If one bounce or one flag doesn't go your way. And we saw them sort of skirt by with, like, barely top 25 teams through the Big Ten West, and they had they'd win on a punt return or a pick six or something like that. And it seems like that the results are catching up with their play. This isn't just this year. This is really over the last year and a half. But Iowa State is a really good football team. It was on the road. They are, competitors for the Big 12. So if you're looking at it from that point of view, they were in a game on the road against a team that might be in the playoff. And, maybe I actually think this was probably a little closer than I thought. I thought Iowa State was going to go out and be the better team, and it's hard to blow out Iowa, but I thought they would be the deserved winners here, and I think Iowa's going to be kicking themselves that there was a chance to win this game. This wasn't the Big 12 air raid offense that we see. This was a game that could have gone either way, and unfortunately Iowa was on the wrong side of it. All right, let's scroll down. Indiana 56-9 over Kennesaw. Nice 4-touchdown game from Mendoza. Minnesota 66, Northwestern State 0. Minnesota did run out of fireworks after their touchdown in the third quarter.
Darius Taylor, by the way, is day-to-day. That's the only story from that game, Sean.
Yep, and they didn't score anymore, so obviously, why score if the fans can't see fireworks? Wisconsin 42, Middle Tennessee 10. Good for Wisconsin to stretch this one out. They're 2-0 amid, uncertainty there. 3 touchdowns for Danny O'Neal. We'll see what happens soon with Wisconsin. And then Rutgers pulls away from Miami, Ohio, 45-17. Week 1 for Rutgers was a little closer than people hoped against Ohio, and Ohio just went and beat West Virginia, so maybe that game isn't as bad as we initially thought.
No, like I said last week, Sean, Ohio won them back, and Athen Kalakmanis for the first time ever, Greg Schiano might have a passing attack at Rutgers. I was so excited I had to interrupt you.
And they're I know they've played two teams from the MAC, but they've scored 78 points so far in
Yeah,
two games.
79 points, Sean.
79. 79 points in two games. I mean, hey, that's not nothing. All right, down we go to a team that scored 0 points this season. Nebraska 68, Akron 0. A little bit of a bounce back from Dylan Raiola. Not that he played bad week one, but they definitely didn't play as good as they could have. Obviously, Nebraska played Thursday in week one, so you extra prep for an inferior opponent, and they went to town. Good performance there. We've got USC 59, Georgia Southern 20. Joe, how about 129 points for USC through 2 weeks?
Yeah, everyone's gonna continue to jump on Lincoln Riley, and I don't think I don't think defeating the criticism is gonna be beating down two inferior opponents, but it is something to watch here. Hopefully, it's just them building up momentum. Purdue will not be a challenge for them, so I'm gonna call it wait and see with USC. I'm not doubting Lincoln Riley. I'm not doubting the players. It's just I'm gonna be like the rest of the country and say wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, these from one point of view, these 2 weeks could not have gone better for them.
Absolutely.
Playing these games, there's not a lot you can gain. There is a ton that you can lose. But they're getting their backups some real reps here against Division I opponents, and it's not because their starters got hurt. So that is something to look out for. And then this one, we got the double overtime thriller in East Lansing, Joe. Michigan State 42, Boston College 40. A return game from the game that Boston College won in Chestnut Hill last year. Aiden Childs and the offense get the job done with some really clutch throws down the stretch. It looked like Dylan Lonergan and Boston College might have a chance to win this one. They were up at halftime. They get to overtime. Both teams are making plays, but Michigan State stops Boston College on their 2-point conversion after they scored, and Aiden Childs and Michigan State convert. But what a crazy game this was, sort of lost on Peacock and NBC amidst some of the other good games like Michigan and Oklahoma. But we asked for Michigan State to win this one convincingly. They don't, but they still get the win.
Yeah, I thought they would cover that 3.5, 4.5, and let's go positive, negative, because you could look at both. Positive, Aiden Childs, probably the game of his career. 4 TDs, I think 5 combined when you count the rushing TD. Didn't throw a pick. A lot of the problems fans criticized him for last year, which was no one denies his talent. Everyone denies his ability to protect the ball. Today, on Saturday, it was on full display that he could protect the ball and effectively lead an offense and in a way be Superman. I know Nick Marsh had 2 TDs, but 68 yards, to score 42 points, you would think Michigan State would need a lot more from Nick Marsh. I think the running game with Mekhi Frazier and Childs himself running really helped Michigan State out. I'm going to go negative here. The pass defense looks not great. Let's face it. It probably regressed from last year.
Looks bad.
I think they can get some pass rush. I know the interior's held down by Alex Van Sumer. They have rushes at the QB from Jordan Hall, but I think those two guys need some more help, whether it's blitzes, whether it's, maybe the corners cover a little better. Let's face it, Sean, the secondary for Michigan State's going to be a weakness throughout the year. This is a major indicator. Boston College didn't have much success on the ground against Fordham. Kind of the same deal here. But what I'll say, Sean, is if you knew they couldn't rush it and they were still passing for that much, not to take away from Dylan Lonergan, 40 points to an ACC team, even including double overtime. I don't know how that's going to fare. They're lucky they don't play Ohio State this year, but they play a lot of pass-heavy teams in the coming weeks after Youngstown. So a lot to fix for Michigan State, but you can fix problems at 2-0, so that's not the worst thing for that team.
And Boston College is not as bad as they've been. Last year they weren't terrible either. I think they're probably a bowl eligible team in the ACC this year. Haven't gone through their schedule game by game, but this is not the same caliber of opponent that BC usually is. But this sort of shootout way of playing might be how Michigan State can win a game that they're not supposed to this year.
I agree.
Aiden Childs, I think he's had a good start to the year. He won them this game. And, maybe the defense, if you can get an Aiden Childs great game and the defense can turn the ball over maybe once, I mean, that might be enough to win 45-40 against a good team. But that's what my takeaway was from here. I still think they could lose to anybody in the Big Ten. And then I do think they might be able to beat one of those teams that they're not supposed to if their offense is explosive. That is something that sort of was the case last year, but it looks like they may have taken a step this year. All right, Joe, down the list. Purdue 34, Southern Illinois 17. Not much to report from there. Purdue has 2 wins. Maybe that is something to report. Washington 70, UC Davis 10. Not much to report there. And then unfortunately we have got to go to Las Vegas. UNLV 30, UCLA 23. UNLV was your group of 5 playoff pick last week, Joe. UCLA, Nico, that whole story, we don't have to go over it again. But we were shocked when we saw the Bruins as favorites here. And unfortunately for them, we were right. UNLV did win by 7, but they were sort of in front the whole way.
Yeah, I really don't think this was the schedule UCLA should have played in a rebuild year. I think you said it on our preview cast, Sean. You're playing a team that could win the Big 12, probably is one of the favorites now. Then UNLV, like I said, they're my group of 5 playoff pick, and I know they're a relatively new team, but Dan Mullen, with all that talent, isn't a team I'm necessarily going to bet against. So I don't know. I don't want to say hot seat for Deshaun Foster because he really inherited an empty cupboard, but I need to see something from this team. Nico was okay enough. I think
He did have a big peg at the end, though.
I know. I think he's objectively a good player. I know the offseason stuff makes people want to bombard him with extra criticism. I think this team needs a lot of help. I think their
Yeah.
offensive line needs to be better, and they need to get something from. They need some kind of big win to spark this program, and
Yeah.
I hope it comes.
Yeah, he's not the type to be Superman. Like, there are a couple out there, like Mateer, like Childs to a degree.
Yeah.
They'd probably be a better fit. Nico's a guy who at Tennessee had plenty of weapons, did a decent job at spraying it around, but when there's nobody to spray it around to, that's when things get difficult. And you don't want to. They need to win badly. I think. They really were not close to winning either of these games, week 1 or 2. It's not like they lost on a field goal. Could have gone either way. They are 0-2, and no way would this have not been 0-2. So disappointing for them as they'll try and bounce back next week. But Joe, that is all of our games in week 2. So thank you, everybody. It was a up and down week for the Big